Imagine a quiet Japanese village. It's the middle of the night, and everyone's asleep. Then, boom! Like a bomb going off right above the rooftops. People bolt upright in bed. But it's not an explosion, it's just a train. A train that emerged from a tunnel less than a mile away. How is that even possible? And what does a tiny bird with a fish in its beak have to do with it? This is the story of one of the most elegant engineering puzzles of the 20th century. The story of how the world's fastest train ran into a problem that Japan's best minds couldn't crack. And how the answer turned up not in a laboratory, but on the bank of a pond, in the beak of a bird that dives for fish. First, the train itself. The Shinkansen is Japan's high-speed bullet train, an engineering legend. It launched in 1964, in time for the Tokyo Olympics. Sleek and white, it became a symbol of a new Japan, and for decades, the gold standard for what a train of the future should look like. The Japanese are obsessed with train speed and punctuality. Here, a train that arrives 1 minute late is already a news story. So engineers constantly chased one thing: faster, faster, faster. And by the 1990s, they hit a wall. Literally, a wall made of air. We're talking about speeds above 185 miles per hour. At that speed, air stops being an empty void, the train simply slices through. It becomes a dense, elastic barrier. An invisible wall the train crashes into every single second of its journey. And that wall started fighting back. The faster the train went, the worse a mysterious problem became. At first, engineers barely noticed it, but with every new speed record, it grew. Until it turned into a nightmare that threatened to halt all progress. And the epicenter of that nightmare was the tunnels. Japan is a land of mountains. To build a straight high-speed line, engineers had to literally stitch through them, tunnel after tunnel, hundreds of miles underground. And it was inside those tunnels that the thing engineers quietly called the tunnel boom was born. Here's what happened. The train hurtles into a narrow tunnel at tremendous speed. It pushes the air ahead of it, and that air has nowhere to go. The tunnel walls trap it. The air compresses tighter and tighter, building a pressure wave in front of the train. A genuine air plug. And here's where it gets interesting. That compressed air wave races through the tunnel ahead of the train. When it bursts out the other end into open space, the pressure drops instantly. Bang! A deafening boom, like a gunshot or an explosion. Deep, powerful, a punch to the eardrums. That boom could be heard a quarter mile from the tunnel exit, by some accounts, nearly a mile away. Imagine living near one of these lines. And several times a day, a shockwave from underground rattles your house. Residents of nearby villages were furious, and you can't really blame them. But the noise was only the tip of the problem. The pressure wave physically shook the tunnel structure. It created vibrations that wore down the tracks and the train itself. And it slowed the train down and devoured energy. The train was burning power, fighting the very air plug it had created. Engineers were trapped. Go faster, and you get a louder boom and tighter noise regulations you're already violating. Slow down, and you lose everything the train was built for. Speed and silence had become enemies, and no one could reconcile them. They could have just accepted it, driven slower. But this is Japan, and this is the Shinkansen, a symbol of the country. Retreat wasn't an option. What was needed was a solution no one had ever found. One that would let the train fly through tunnels fast and quietly. And that's when our hero enters the story. His name was Eiji Nakatsu, an engineer at JR West, the company responsible for the trains. A serious professional, general manager of the engineering division. But Nakatsu had one hobby that would change everything in this story. And at first glance, it had nothing to do with engineering. Eiji Nakatsu loved birds. He was a devoted amateur ornithologist, a member of a wildlife society, and spent his free time birdwatching. Binoculars, a notebook, silence by the water. For him, it was an escape from the thunder of trains. He had no idea that birds would give him the answer. Nakatsu's team had a mission: design the new 500 series train, It had to be faster than anything before it, which meant the tunnel boom problem was front and center. And Nakatsu started asking the right question. Not, how do we make the tunnel quieter, but why does this boom happen at all? He pinpointed the real issue. The problem isn't speed itself. The problem is a sudden change. The train instantly forces air into the tight space of the tunnel. Pressure spikes abruptly and then drops just as abruptly at the exit. The question became, can you make that transition gradual? Can you enter a dense medium, gently? And somewhere in the back of Nakatsu's memory, that phrasing snagged on something. Enter a dense medium gently. He had seen this done before, many times. Not in engineering, in nature. By the water, at the pond where he spent hours watching birds. There is a bird called the common kingfisher, Alcedo atthis, in Latin, small, barely bigger than a sparrow, but colored as if it had been dipped in molten turquoise and orange. It lives along rivers and ponds, and it hunts in a way that's impossible to look away from. The kingfisher perches on a branch above the water, watching for fish. Then it drops. It dives from air straight into water, plunging like a tiny arrow. The target, a fish below the surface. And this is where the physics begins, the kind Nakatsu understood as an engineer. Water is not air. Water is 800 times denser. For a small bird to dive from air into water is like hitting a brick wall at full speed. There should be a jarring impact, a splash, a fountain of spray. The fish would feel the disturbance and dart away. Hunt failed. Yet the kingfisher enters the water almost silently, almost without a splash, as if the water simply parts and lets it through. It transitions from the lightness of air to water 800 times denser so smoothly that the fish doesn't even register what's happening. And that is the whole secret. Stop for a moment. A bird moving at great speed from a light medium into a dense one smoothly, without impact, without a sudden spike. And what was the train missing? Exactly that. To ease into the compressed air, plug in the tunnel. It was the same problem, and nature had already solved it. There it is. The moment this whole story exists to reach. Nakatsu watches a diving kingfisher, and he doesn't see a bird. He sees an engineering solution. He sees his train. The secret to entering a dense medium without a bang right there in the shape of a bird's beak. Look closely at the kingfisher's beak. It's long, thin, and sharply pointed. It widens gradually from the very tip back toward the head smoothly, without any abrupt steps. That shape is what allows it to enter water gently. The beak doesn't slap the surface, it parts it, steadily increasing the displacement as the bird goes deeper. And so the famous nose of the 500 series was born, a long drawn-out beak about 15 meters from tip to cab. The train looked like nothing that had ever run on rails before. It didn't look like a machine. It looked like a living creature aimed straight ahead, like a bird frozen at the moment of its dive. And here is what is perhaps most remarkable about this story. The kingfisher solved the main problem, the tunnel boom, but it wasn't the only bird that helped build this train. To take it to the next level, Nakatsu and his team turned to 2 more species, and each one solved its own separate problem. Meet the second headache. On top of the train sits a pantograph, the arm that slides along the overhead wire and draws electricity. At high speed, air swirling around the pantograph broke into turbulent vortices. And vortices mean noise. A sharp, high-pitched whine, another source of complaints from the people living along the line. Again, Nakatsu, the birdwatcher, knew where to look. There is a hunter in nature for whom silence is literally a matter of life. The owl. It glides toward its prey in total darkness, and the mouse doesn't hear it coming until the very last instant. A bird the size of a cat flies and makes almost no sound at all. How? The secret is in the feathers. Along the leading edge of an owl's wing are tiny serrations like the teeth of a comb. They break up the large turbulent flow into many small, quiet streams. The vortices never have a chance to build up and become loud. The owl literally combs the air, making its flight almost soundless. The team brought that idea to the train, They added a serrated structure to the pantograph support, modeled on the owl's feather. The serrations broke the airflow into fine streams, and the piercing whine of the pantograph faded. The silent night hunter taught a high-speed train to keep the noise down. And then there was a third bird. The pantograph had another headache it needed to press firmly against the wire while also holding its position steadily in the airflow without rattling or drifting. What was needed was a support that would cut through air with minimal resistance. And once again, Nakatsu looked to birds. This time to the penguin, the ungainly creature on land that becomes a torpedo in water. A penguin's body is perfectly shaped to glide through water, a dense medium with almost no drag. Nakatsu used the penguin's body profile as the basis for the pantograph support structure. Streamlined like a penguin, the support carved through air smoothly and steadily. It held the pantograph in position, without vibration, with minimal resistance. So let's tally the score. The kingfisher gave the train its nose. The owl gave it a quieter pantograph. The penguin gave it a stable support. 3 birds, 1 train. Think about that for a moment. One of the most high-tech objects of its era was assembled from blueprints that evolution had written. The nose of a diving bird, the wing of a nocturnal hunter, the body of an underwater swimmer. The 500 series Shinkansen is not just a train. It's a record of millions of years of natural engineering, cast in steel. And what Nakatsu did has a precise name. It's called biomimicry, imitating nature, solving human problems by taking cues from living organisms. Not drawing inspiration from beauty, but literally copying a working mechanism that evolution spent millions of years refining. Nakatsu didn't invent the shape of the beak. He noticed it. And that's the power of the approach. Nature is a research laboratory that has been running non-stop for billions of years. Every form that has survived to our time has passed the most ruthless selection process there is: survival. The kingfisher's beak is streamlined not because it looks good, but because without that shape, the bird would starve. Thank you for being with us. If you find the idea inspiring that nature is our greatest teacher, share this story with someone who still enjoys being amazed by the world. We're already preparing the next one, because nature still holds so many secrets waiting to be discovered. See you next time. Subscribe.